Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the final museum talk of the 2021-22 season. And I'm delighted to say that this evening we are joined by James Harris, who in 2007, as a mere stripling of a teenager, he became Glamorgan's youngest ever wicket taker. And after 9 years with Middlesex, I'm delighted, of course, that James has made it back to Glamorgan for the 2022 season. So, James, it's good evening to you. How are you?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thanks, Andrew. I'm really well, thanks. Very much loving life, being back down in Wales. We're just setting up shop now in Pontcanna, not far away from the ground. I'm preparing for a season to start. So all really exciting, and thanks for having me. And I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I know you and your partner. It's a busy time with house moves and all the rest, but there are some great opportunities looking ahead, and it's a wonderful time of year. I tend to look at the early part of March as one of my favorite months, because not only do we have the end of the Six Nations, we have the National Hunt Festival, the Cheltenham Festival of horse racing, and then straight into the start of the cricket season. And with rugby and National Hunt racing being my two other passions, I should say there are others, but I'm not going to go into detail there for obvious reasons. But it's a great time of year, a time of year with great expectations, great anticipations, and James, I'm sure you're going to have a very, very prosperous season back with us. Well, what we're going to do in our usual way is talk you through your career, and I do apologize, James, that I've got some photos of a very young and oh dear me, quite spiky haired. I'm not quite sure, but let's start way back. So you're now, you're approaching your 32nd birthday, but let's go back to the mid 2000s when you were a young teenager, a young schoolboy. I've put there, I hope I've got the crests right. We've got Ponte de Lice, Comprehensive, and Coleg Gorsinen. So talk us through, how did you get involved in cricket in the first place?
Well, it sounds quite scary when you say I'm nearly 32. Look, I kind of fell into it, really. My dad played some cricket, when he was young. Sort of stopped, not too long after I was born. And quite luckily, Ponte de Lice Comprehensive was next door to Ponte de Lice Cricket Club. One of my best friends at the time played a bit of cricket, said, would you like to come down? And then it kind of just all started falling into place from there, really. I've got a very kind of obsessive, compulsive sort of style personality. So when I get into things, I get into them quite deeply. So, I took to cricket really well. My parents did, everything they could and drove me up and down the country to help me to training and to selections and to trials and various things. And me and my dad, we used to spend a huge amount of time at the nets in Ponte de Lice, and he'd bowl at me for hours. And I'd always be badgering him to sort of to take me down, really. And things just started snowballing. One of the other fathers put me forward with a couple of the other boys for sort of Wales under 11s trials. Alan Jones was coach of that team at the time, and thankfully Alan saw something, picked me, and that's where it kind of started.
Yeah, I know your dad is on the call this evening, so it's great to see Russ joining us. And I know the commitment and everything else that goes with overseeing a young cricketer's development. You have to say a massive thanks for parents for taking time out. But James, you must have had a sporting hero. So from a cricketing point of view, who was that?
At that age, Jesus, probably two. Probably Glenn Mcgrath and Sachin Tendulkar. So I tried to amalgamate the two and try and emulate both in their different skills. Probably haven't quite succeeded at either, but yeah, probably those two growing up.
Yeah, I was going to say Sachin Tendulkar, you set the bar pretty high, and also with Glenn McGrath, but you've developed very much into a bowler who bats. I'd like to think all-rounder, but what was it about Glenn McGrath that took your fancy?
More than anything, the relentlessness of how he went about what he did. It was nothing fancy. There was no, huge, magic about it. You knew what he was going to go and do, and he did it every day better than anyone else throughout his entire career. And that's kind of what I've always tried to do is, I've thrown myself, and I probably put myself down as the, model of a sort of professional athlete. I sort of live and breathe it all the time, to my detriment probably at sometimes. But I love that, and I love the life, and I love the lifestyle, and I'm in bed at stupid early o'clock, and I'm eating brilliantly, and all these things that you sort of expect from an athlete. And that's how I try and live, to try and emulate that, and to try and make sure that whatever performance I put out is as good as I possibly can.
Yeah. Have you ever met Glenn McGrath?
No, actually, I don't think I have.
But he was your role model, and obviously someone with an outstanding track record, both at Test level, but also did great service in the UK in county cricket, and obviously in Shield cricket in Australia. So when, as far as your own sporting career was concerned, so with the Bont, how old were you when you made your first 11 debut for them?
Well, very young. I reckon I played my first sort of game of cricket at 10, Wales under 11s, and I reckon by sort of, my dad will probably know this better than me, he will do, 12, maybe going on 13, probably 12. I sort of played a couple of first team games, I think, for the Bont, and that's where I learned my trade. I owe a huge amount to some of the people there, Barry Lloyd in particular, who did a lot of coaching when we were young down there. I've already mentioned Alan Jones, but Alan was the biggest influence on my career. Picking me up as 11-year-old. I was captain of that team as an 11-year-old, and then we did a huge amount of work and batting coaching and mentoring for the winters after that point. And I can't speak highly enough or thank Alan enough for everything that he did for me when I was young.
Yeah, and Barry sadly no longer with us. And Barry, for people on the call, you may remember BJ Lloyd, Barry Lloyd, as an off-spinner batter for Glamorgan in the 1970s into the 1980s, but he did so much work grassroots level, and someone who I know had his heart in the game. And of course, his daughter Hannah went on to represent the England women's team as well, and someone who ate, slept, drank, etc. cricket. And as you say, someone who put an awful lot into the game, and just how sad it is that he was taken from us as a young age. If I just talk you through, James, then your earliest memories maybe of watching Glamorgan. Did you and your dad go along to St Helens or come here to Sophia Gardens to support the team?
Yeah, we did. We did both. I can sort of remember, being sat in the what was the old ground then, because it obviously wasn't constructed like it is now. Sat in the sort of temporary big stand at the Cathedral Road end, watching Glamorgan, watching Crofty. John Derrick was then in charge, and when I was young and sort of coming through the system, John actually took me up on the old balcony. I would have been 13, maybe going on 14, something like that at that point. And just remember John sort of bringing me up and introducing me to a couple of the players at that point. And I sort of brushed past Crofty a little bit because he was sort of involved. I'd seen him down the Bonds a few times when I was young. And yeah, that was my first introduction to sort of, professional sport, I suppose, even at that age.
And clearly you were being earmarked as someone who was going to have a future in the game. I can remember Steve Watkin telling me that there was a very promising, very talented young man who was poised to be playing in the Glamorgan Academy. So talk me through, James, how you went from playing for the Bont to being a member of the Glamorgan Academy.
Well, things happened, and I look back at this now, and I do it quite regularly at such a young age. And all the sort of early milestones came at such a young age that there was no real thinking involved. It was just another game of cricket. There was no, I don't know, there was no expectation, but there was expectation from myself to be every game of cricket I largely played during that period of time, I, more or less excelled in, whether it be, started doing pretty well for the Bont in the first team. I'd go away and play some sort of junior cricket and play junior cricket for the Bont and play sort of West of England under 13s and made my second 11 debut at 14, which you've got written up there, and had played my first game and bowled really well. And that was the kind of expectation. I'd turn up, I'd bowl as I'd expected to do in any game. And it happened at such a young age that yeah, I'm incredibly grateful, because to look back on some of these numbers now and to think that I was playing, second 11 men's cricket at 14 is quite extraordinary, really. It hurt my game as well, to a certain degree. At that age, I was a proper all-rounder. And didn't know really which way I was going to fall, whether I'd be a better batsman or a bowler. And playing sort of that much senior cricket at that standard as a 14-year-old, my batting couldn't really cope the pace of the game, the height and the bounce and stuff and what people generated. As a young boy, my batting probably suffered for a few years later, but I more than managed to sort of hold my own with the ball, and that kind of kept me sort of going through that progression that I did.
Yeah, I've got a stat there on the screen that you also played for Wales against Holland as a 15-year-old, 14-year-old or whatever, and taking 3 wickets there, and clearly that whetted your appetite for moving on.
Yeah, and by this point, geez, I'm at that age where I'm still in school. I'm still in secondary school. This is a bit of fun. There wasn't a huge amount of thought given to it for the sort of standard I was playing or what I was achieving, sort of thing. It was missing a little bit of school to play a few extra cricket games, and then I think I was really fortunate, I suppose. I worked really hard, but I just kept bowling well and kept expecting to bowl well. I had some really good stats through those years, and and was sort of competing with some of the pros at that point, stats wise and stuff. And I just look back on a really, really fond period of my life, sort of thing.
And of course, someone we must mention as well with Steve Watkin, who had retired from playing full-time for Glamorgan and of course representing England as well, and was the first Glamorgan Academy director as well. And I know that Steve thought a lot of you, and in 2006 you make your debut for the Glamorgan First 11. It was a competition called the T20 Floodlight Cup at the time. I seem to remember it was Derbyshire, Essex, and I think Sussex, all of whom had floodlights. And there was this small little, I'm not saying it was a breakaway competition, but it was a little competition that 4 counties had, all of whom had floodlights, trying to promote T20 cricket. And I can remember, I think it was traveling to Sussex with you in a car with JD, and that's when we first got to know each other. And it must have been a wonderful experience for you to suddenly be in the Glamorgan First 11 squad for these games.
Yeah, completely surreal to think, I'm playing this sort of level of cricket along with, the normal junior cricket you would have been at that time. So I sort of mentioned West of England. I played sort of England at the 15s at the same point as playing, some of this with the senior guys, and I'm playing at a professional level, I suppose. And I mean, jumping back and forth was quite an extraordinary thing to sort of be doing, really. But I'm incredibly grateful. I mean, I was really lucky. The fact that the structure, is what it was, the fact that Glamorgan at the time had a relatively small staff, all of those things played into me getting the opportunities that I did at that age. And I owe Steve a huge amount, and we've still got a great relationship. Steve was stood at the back of the net while I was bowling for 40 minutes today, and we were chatting about, all things like we would have done, all those years ago. And look, there's a huge amount of gratitude for everyone, from me growing up to everyone at Glamorgan, and largely a lot of the same people are still there, which and I've got a great relationship with them all, which is fabulous.
Yeah, I think I'm right in saying that you actually signed your first professional contract with Glamorgan at the age of 15.
No, I think I might have got you on this. I think I was 16 and 9 days.
Okay.
Because I remember, I wore number 9 on my shirt to start, which is extraordinary in itself, really, when you think about it, that number was available as a young upstart. But I think I'm taking it back as well. So I think I'm gonna have number 9 on my shirt for the next bit of time, hopefully, as well.
Okay, well, there aren't many 16-year-olds who will have signed professional terms, so it was a feather in your cap. I know on the Glamorgan staff at the moment, we are very fortunate to have Alex Horton, of course, a member of the England under-19 team that reached the final recently of the World Cup, losing to Pakistan, I think it was, in the final. But if Alex can follow in your footsteps, James, then the future is very bright here at Glamorgan. Well, just coming back to your own career in 2007, here you are making now your first-class debut for Glamorgan against Nottinghamshire at Trent Bridge. Now, if I've done my homework correctly, and I'm more than open to persuasion if I haven't, but I've got a feeling that Dave Harrison had a few niggles. Simon Jones was coming back from various injuries as well. And you were there, you'd impressed in pre-season, firing on all cylinders, and you get the call up to go to Notts at Trent Bridge.
I did. I mean, that was that was an interesting experience. It was fantastic. I mean, what a ground to make your debut at Trent Bridge. I remember loads about that game. My first ball was to a gentleman called Jason Gallion. It was a leg stump half volley. It went career into the mid-wicket boundary for 4. And I'd be lying if I thought there wasn't a thought about, geez, this is another step up again. Thankfully, I got an early wicket. Matthew Elliott caught Bilal Shafayat off me at sort of second slip in my start of my third over. I took the new ball actually in that game as well, which I suppose not a lot of people probably do on debut at times. And that sort of settled me down, and I had a reasonable sort of game. I bowled okay. I got a couple with the bat. I went in night watchman because we, if I remember correctly, we followed on. But yeah, look, hugely positive experience, and an incredible one at such a young age.
Yeah, I've got the stat here. It was a wicket with your 14th ball in first-class cricket, and as it says here on the screen, at the age of 16 years, 351 days, you were Glamorgan's youngest ever bowler to take a wicket in first class, or certainly in championship stroke first class cricket. And you kept your place in the Glamorgan team, because then we head to Neville Road in Bristol to play against Gloucestershire. I think you just celebrated your 17th birthday. I think you were, if I'm right, you were 17 years and 3 days old when the game started. And you end up with those figures there on the screen. A 12-wicket match haul. To spare your blushes, James, only W.G. Grace had taken more wickets in a first-class match at a younger age. I think that record went back, so the cricket statos told me, that record went back to June 1865. Wow. Now, I can remember seeing you at the game, obviously in my role as scorer, And what are your memories of that game?
Well, it started. It was an interesting start. It was my 17th birthday, the first day of that game, and my mum was a bit unhappy because she had my first driving lesson booked in for that day, which we had to cancel, which kind of made her quite unhappy at the time. But obviously, what happened in the game happened, and I remember us then driving home, mum, dad, and myself in the car from Bristol, and I just thought, wow, that was a pretty special couple of days. It was interesting. I felt like I bowled pretty well. Certainly in the first innings, I didn't bowl quite so well in the second, but certainly bowled well in the first innings. We kept coming off for breaks of rain. I was bowling to a howling gale at one point, which I kind of remember. But it was an extraordinary couple of days, really, for me on my 17th birthday to be out there playing. Alex Wolf played in that game. Simon Jones played in that game. Amongst many others, and to walk away after 4 days, with 12 wickets and in that manner, I just can't. It beggars belief, really, to sort of think about it now, 15 or so years on.
Yeah, well, it's all there in the scorebook, and I know you also acquired your first nickname of Bones, because I can remember Michael Powell. I asked Powley, and he said, "Well, James is just skin and bones. That's it." And I think the Bones bit stuck. I know there's been other nicknames like Rolf, which I think is fairly obvious, and Lloyd Christmas, etc. But talking in terms of what you did on the field, it was something absolutely outstanding. 12 wickets in the match. In fact, in terms of championship cricket, Brian Langford of Somerset, who was a little bit older, 17 years and 175 days, had taken 14 wickets in a game against Kent at Bath in 1953. And I can remember the journalists in the press box and the score box at Bristol piling out all those stats and asking me and Edward Bevan, what's the background on this young Welshman? And of course, very, very proud to say, James, about your background, and great to see a young Welsh cricketer doing so well. Well, from there, we carry on to Swansea. And here we are with you now with bat in hand. I'm not sure whether Sachin Tendulkar played a shot like that, James, but anyway, the next highlight in your illustrious youthful career, a game against Notts at Swansea. So it's the return fixture, having made your debut up at Trent Bridge. And I think you went in at number 8. And you shared a remarkable partnership with Crofty. If I've got my stats right, 185 was the partnership for the 9th wicket with Crofty. And I've got a vivid memory of you frustrating the Notts bowlers, and Charlie Shrek, we'll talk about him in a minute, Charlie Shrek actually bowling around the wicket to a leg slip, backward square, and a short leg. And I know some of the very passionate locals at Swansea were booing and giving Charlie all sorts of advice about maybe you shouldn't be trying to reenact Bodyline against this young teenager from Pontedillice. So what are your memories of that game, James?
Well, I think to start, there's more of the background with with me, myself and sort of Charlie Shrek. So the first game, like you said, my debut was at Trent Bridge, and Charlie was quite talkative, shall we say, during the game.
Vocal.
Yeah, nice way to put it. Very vocal. And I was obviously a very young lad making his debut, and he started bouncing me when we were at Trent Bridge. And for whatever reason, I can't say why or what was going through my head, rather than walk down the wicket and sort of tap an area at 7 or 8 meters at a good length, for some reason, I followed him back and sort of started tapping halfway down where he was bowling, to the massive amusement of some fine cricketers who were in the sort of slip cord and who were very much sort of, I think, on my side largely. So come 3-4 games later, and we're back at St Helens, and we're myself and Crofty are sort of frustrating knots and putting together a pretty big partnership, and he decides to go at it again with a sort of a short leg man around the corner and the sort of field you'd expect for sort of around the wicket short bowling, and he got me good. He hit me in the chest, and I had a couple of minutes to sit down and take that in on the ground just to try and catch my breath. But no, that was a great experience. I think I batted at 10. I want to correct you again. My memory is back. He batted at 10, and Crofty was at 9 or something, and Crofty got 100, got to his 100, and they took the new ball, and he sort of played a bit of a waft outside off stump and left me high and dry, and then me and Dean Koska put on a few more. But I think more than anything, that partnership sort of turned the tide in that game, and we put ourselves with a total on the board and bowled Notts out to win. And it was a brilliant victory when you consider that Notts team had Stephen Fleming in it, and David Hussey and Graham Swan, and amongst a lot of other good cricketers in that Notts team. And that was a really big win for us to turn that around, and for me and the Crofty to put on that sort of size of partnership. We went from being sort of really behind to in front, and we managed to bowl them out and win. So I think more than anything, playing a big part in a team victory was the bit that I hold most favourably in my head.
Yeah, absolutely. Cricket is a team game. Your bat there, I presume you had a bat sponsorship at that time?
I did. So I won every year at the Bunbury under-15 sort of regional, the regional cricket sort of thing. You'd play the West, or was then the West, North, South, and the Midlands. And they hand out 4 scholarships. The Daily Telegraph handed out 4 scholarships, of which I was the lucky recipient of one. And with that was a to use their kits, which I took up and did for the best part of 10 years, to be honest.
Great. Am I right in thinking that, just going back to your partnership with Crofty, am I right in thinking that a few years before you and your dad had been there at Swansea, and you'd actually gone up and asked Crofty for his autograph, and or was that at Cardiff?
No, I think that was at the Bont, to be perfectly honest with you. I reckon Crofty was playing at the Bont and I was down there. And that I'm going to say that bat is still around. My mum and dad have still got that bat. I'm pretty confident with Crofty's signature on the back. That was a Slazenger V100 Panther from a sporting goods store for the best part of £20, I think. And I got Crofty to sign it.
Yeah, obviously I know, just to get the advert correct, I know that other bats are available, but there is what we are seeing there in the image is a Slazenger V100. So clearly you decided on a good piece of willow. And in 2007 as well, given your outstanding entry into professional cricket, you get a chance now. You said you'd played for England under 15s, under 16s, whatever, but now you get a chance to move on to play for the England under 19s. And as it says there on the screen, you were playing in the 2007 series against Pakistan. So who also was in the England under-19 team at the time?
That's a really good question. I remember lots of the boys who were in the team when I went to the World Cup in Malaysia, which was the year later. So players in those sort of teams that age, jeepers, would have been Billy Godalming, Stephen Finn, Liam Dawson, James Taylor, Tom Westley, Ben Brown, Chris Wokes, Stuart Meeker. I know there's names I'm missing, but we had a really strong sort of age group around that sort of age. We so many guys playing first class, and some of them playing quite a bit for England as well. We had a really strong couple of years as a junior teams at that age.
Yeah, we've talked about Alan Jones and Steve Watkin and John Derrick helping to coach you at Glamorgan and with the Wales age group team. So who were the coaches now as you moved on into the England setup? Who were the people looking after you?
Do you know what? I still hold the Glamorgan coaches in high regard, to be perfectly honest. At that age, I mean, you go away to sort of series and you go away to a World Cup and for a month or two. But I mean, it was the work that was done with Steve Watkin, Adrian Shaw. Do you know what I mean? That the groundwork that you put in, all the hours I spent with Alan Jones in the Neath Indoor School. That was the most important work. So we had some good coaches, absolutely. That sort of England 19 stuff and various bits, but it's those Glamorgan coaches that got me there.
And we mustn't forget as well that Glamorgan at the time, here we are in 2008, and there you are, as you said, James, very proudly wearing the number 9 shirt. Of course, I should have said earlier on in that partnership with Crofty wearing against Nottingham shirt, Swansea the number 10 shirt, and you wearing the number 9 shirt. I can remember in the saying to a couple of the journos in the press box, was this the greatest ever number 9-10 combo that had played at the St Helens ground? To which I heard a whole range of scrum halves and fly halves being reeled off. But coming back to this photo, Glamorgan in 2008, we were so lucky to have the services in a Glamorgan sweater of Jason Gillespie, of course, known as Dizzy. How helpful was Dizzy to you, James?
Fabulous. And do you know what? I'm looking at that picture and thinking I'd really like to have that photo because I don't think I've got it. I still speak to Jason a fair amount. Obviously, he's coached here a lot for sort of Yorkshire and Sussex, and he was brilliant. He bowled fabulously in that year that he was here without a huge amount of luck and didn't take a huge number of wickets in a Glamorgan shirt. But to have him at the other end and to have him sort of here standing at mid-off, when I was bowling, it's just invaluable at that age to have someone with that sort of experience and skill and talent, and to be such a lovely, lovely man at the same time. To have him playing and to learn off was, it was a wonderful joy.
Yeah, I know when I'm often asked at various events who's Glamorgan's greatest overseas player. Well, if you look at the stats, obviously people like Waka Younis, Viv Richards, Magic Khan, more recently Colin Ingram, Michael Hogan, if you want to put that name into the category, and of course
I've got to jump in. We've got to throw Matty Elliott and Michael Casper.
Absolutely, Casper, Matty Elliott, and Marnus Labuschagne. But I often say in the 1 year that he was with us, Dizzy, Jason Gillespie, and I know, I'm fortunate enough obviously to spend time on the road with you guys as well. And I know the amount of care and attention to detail that Dizzy had. And it was no surprise that soon after Dizzy's career with Glamorgan, he went on to become such a hugely successful coach, both at county and at higher level. So in your pathway, James, it's great that we're recognising people like Dizzy. And what I'll do, James, is I'll send you a copy of that photo so you can add it to your collection. Well, by the time we now move on to 2008, 2009, you're now a regular in the Glamorgan Attack. So who were your colleagues in the Glamorgan Attack?
Oh, jeepers. Around then, Dave Harrison, Hugh Waters, Alex Wharf. I'm trying to think of names. We had Garnet Kruger, didn't we, for a couple of years?
Yeah, left arm Adam Chantry as well.
Yes, Adam Chantry, absolutely. Yes, we did. There were some good bowlers in there.
And from North Wales as well?
North Wales, Will Owen.
Yep. Now we'll talk about your other interesting batting record with Will in a minute, but it must have been quite an amazing feeling then. We've got you bowling with David Harrison. You mentioned Muddy, you mentioned Hugh Waters, you mentioned Will Owen, a homegrown attack with Garnet Kruger, of course, who played for South Africa as well. So what was it like for you suddenly now to be almost the leader of the pack?
Well, I don't want this to come across as arrogance in any way, but it kind of felt relatively normal. I'd done that my whole life. That's how I'd gone since, from an 11-year-old onwards, really. So even though I was young, and it just kind of seemed relatively natural. That's kind of what I was used to. That's how my cricket was played. That's how, I captained a lot growing up at sort of junior level, and kind of always had that responsibility on my shoulders. So I kind of fell into it, relatively easily, I suppose. And it just came sort of a second nature, because that's what I'd always done in all the games of cricket I'd played.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people in and around the team realised that there was a wise head on the young shoulders, and you were able, as you quite modestly say, to step up and to fill in. Obviously, Alex Wolf's career coming to an end, and unfortunately, David Harrison, an injury curtailing his career, because like you, Dave was winning honours with the England Lions and the England A team, and unfortunately, David had to call time on his career. But here you were moving through. Wolfie as well, injuries affecting him. We talked about Simon Jones as well, also sadly with injuries. But you were largely, James, injury-free. And in 2010, there you are, the highlights of the 2010 season, you take your 100th first-class wicket for Glamorgan. I'll see if you can remember who that was. I've got it written down here. And then on, I believe, July the 25th, 2010, at the tender age of 20 years and 70 days, you become Glamorgan's youngest ever capped player. What a great year 2010 was.
It was great. I mean, incredibly proud. It's something, I think anytime you come into a new environment, you want to, probably prove you can be there. And I got incredibly lucky to do that second game and, take 12 wickets and kind of know to myself that I deserve to be there, and everybody else kind of acknowledged that I deserve to be there. But then to step on from that and try and cement a place in the team full time, and to see that rewarded by, receiving your cap is an incredibly proud moment for any cricketer. And I felt, wow, almost overwhelmed really that I achieved that. And that was a big goal, when I was growing up, and to do that, really, really quickly from starting. And it was just a great thing.
Yeah, there aren't many people who beat the records of Matthew Maynard, but Matthew had been the previous youngest, I think, at 21. And Mark Wallace there, who's in the picture as well, getting capped in his early 20s. But James, there you are, 20 years and 70 days. Now, your 100th first-class wicket for Glamorgan. Can you remember who that was?
No, honestly, I think my 200th was Rob Newton. I may be completely wrong guessing that as well, but I don't know is the honest answer. Can you enlighten me?
I'm delighted to say that Phil Jakes of Worcestershire.
Yes, it was. It was Phil Jakes. It might have been Corbin Wicket, if off the top of my head. I can't. I haven't got the greatest memory for some of these specifics. I will be absolutely honest with you, but
no. But the reason I'm raising it is obviously Phil Jakes, someone who had done stalwart service in Australian cricket, doing great work for Worcestershire. He did play for other counties as well. But for what I'm trying to say, James, is for you to get a batter of that caliber out was a huge feather in your cap. Now that leads on. We do, as I said earlier, we do have some questions which have come in from people, and Duncan Evans has actually sent in a question. Duncan can't be here this evening, but I know he's going to be logging in to watch the to watch the recording on the website later. But he's actually asked me to ask you, who was the hardest batter you've ever had to dismiss?
That's a really good question. There's been some good ones, especially in those sort of early days. I mean, I was really lucky to catch Graham Hick towards the end of his career, Mark Ramprakash in his prime when he had those couple of years, around that sort of time of sort of scoring, a couple of thousand championship runs a year, which is, unheard of, really. So probably those two. There was a young Ravi Bopara, who's a very hard man to bowl at Essex. I remember him getting lots of runs against us. Probably Mark Ramprakash out of those, I'd imagine. He always felt that he was in control. And one of my biggest memories around that sort of time, around 2010, first session of a championship game at Cardiff, and you feel like you'd bowled one a little full and it was a bit of a half volley, and you think that normally most people would try and climb into it. And Rams was in such good form, and he just walked in after us getting a wicket, and he just I bowled him a half volley, he just tapped it back to me, didn't try to hit it anywhere, looked up and smiled, and he just knew that this bloke was really in control of what he was doing. And he got 150 or 200 later, and he patted him right back at us for the first session of the game, got himself in, started tiring us out, and then as soon as the odds were in his favour, he really put his foot down and made himself incredibly hard to bowl at. Those couple of years, he dominated more than any other batsman I can remember in county cricket.
So would it be fair to say that you prized that wicket most of all the 400, 500 that you've taken in first class cricket?
Oh, there's a few in there that I prized. Getting Chris Rogers out at Lords, playing against Middlesex, that was a big wicket. When we won at Lords in, I'm going to say 2010 or 11, maybe 2012 actually. In those couple of years there, I think I got Andy Strauss, and I think I might have got some wickets in that innings, but I got Strauss and Rogers out in that, and that was the first time Glamorgan had won at Lords in quite a long time. There's been a lot of prized wickets in there, I'll be honest, but yeah, I've been really lucky to play, for such a long time and against so many great players. So to get some of them out along the way is, it's been quite nice.
And more to come, of course, as well.
Absolutely, I hope so.
Well, here's another photo of you in batting mode. I know in the photo there it's against Sussex, as you can see with the wicketkeeper there. But I just want to talk about a game in 2011, remarkable game at Derby. And I said earlier about Will Owen, a remarkable game at Derby where in the Derbyshire first innings, the 10th wicket pairing putting on 100, and then you and Will also sharing a 10th wicket stand. I think it was 121 or something like that. Have you got memories of those games?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those sort of partnerships towards the end of the innings are so vital when you're the batting team, and really demoralising when you're fielding. It's really is a prize. There are prized runs there, really. Just to keep the fielding team out there and to keep inching up your score. I've been involved in a fair amount of those sort of partnerships, really. That one with Will was really important. But there's been quite a few sort of me lower down the order with either one of the batters or some of the tail, and shepherding us or attempting to shepherd us to a better, stronger total. And they're really important. And I still consider myself a proper all-rounder. So getting runs is a big part of what I see my job being.
Yeah. And probably that's more Sachin Tendulkar-esque, that shot there, I would have thought. It's, yeah.
Hey, we'll never know if I got bat on that one or not. That might just be buys. It's a good-looking photo.
It is.
But yeah.
It is. And of course, a game, as I say, the game at Derby, where you and Will wrote your name into the record books. That was a fantastic achievement. Well, at the same time, with all this going on at county level, you're still playing, or you're winning now honours for the England Lions. On my notes in front of me, Australia against Australia 2009. You're lucky enough to go to the West Indies in the winter of 2010 and 2011. So James, what was it like in 2009 here at Cardiff hosting Test cricket at long last, the first Ashes Test coming to the Welsh capital city? You were chosen, I think there was a game at Canterbury, if I remember rightly, against the England Lions, and then going off to the West Indies. How did your game develop from there?
That was amazing. Yeah, that Canterbury experience against to play against Australia as they were sort of leading up to the test, and I'm trying to think of the Australians sort of in that team, but the bowling attack of Stuart Clark, Mitchell Johnson, Shane Watson was playing in that. Obviously Ricky Ponting, I hope. But I mean, it's just unbelievable, like to have those sort of experiences, and to be picked, in that sort of England Lions team in the summer, is a huge thing, because that sort of signifies how well you're doing in sort of county cricket, how well you're thought of, and they're trying to see what you're like in terms of potentially giving you future honours. So to play in those games and to perform in those games, is important if you're ever going to go and take another step up. And interestingly, that photo was at Scarborough against Sri Lanka Ray, and I'll probably put that down as the best I've ever bowled. I probably got 3 wickets, went into the game feeling absolutely terrible, bowled for what felt like an eternity the day before, trying to find some form, and just managed for a couple of bits to click and bowl one of the probably best spells. And I've got video footage of that on my laptop, which I look to all the time. And that's probably the best and most enjoyable spell I think I've ever bowled, when I probably only got 3 wickets. Who were the people? Who were the 3? Oh, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you the names of the Sri Lankan guys I got out. I don't know how many of them made it to playing for the full Sri Lanka team, but it wasn't necessarily to do with the names. It was to do with the feeling and the end result. And there was quite a quick pitch at Scarborough, and the ball was bouncing and seaming and stuff. And it was one of those days where you feel incredibly in control, which doesn't happen often enough. I'd love it to happen more. Well, fingers crossed. In a couple of weeks' time, James, here at Safari, I'm sure that will be happening. Let's just talk about pitches, because obviously a lot is said about the surfaces at Swansea, favouring the spin or the slower bowlers. Although it must be said, I don't necessarily agree with that, because obviously when the tide comes in, the ball does jag around. But for you as a young cricketer honing your skills, a chance to go to the West Indies, and I think I'm right in saying that in 2010, 2011, it wasn't just a tour, because the England Lions, or England A, were actually part of the domestic schedule, playing all of the other inter-island teams. We did. That was the best tour I've ever been on. We did a 9-week sort of island hopping tour around the West Indies, like you said, to play in their sort of domestic 4-day competition. We sort of played a game every week. We played 7 4-day games on that trip. And we had a really, really strong team, and we did really well. But the wickets themselves were really hard work. They were placid, they were slow, pretty flat for the seamers. We had to work hard for our awards, and it was a really rewarding trip. It actually probably wasn't, physically the easiest trip to go through, having been through a full season the year before. To play sort of 7 games. I think I played 6 of the 7. My memory serves me right, and sort of play 6 games at that sort of intensity through March and through back end of January, into February and early March sort of thing, and then to come back and start another season was a huge ask, really. I think physically that was probably a bit too much, but from an experience perspective, it was fantastic. And who was on tour with you then? Who were the other? You said Chris Wokes earlier on. Yeah, Chris Wokes was on that trip. Jay Dernbach was on that trip. Liam Plunkett, other players, James Taylor, James Hildreth was captain. Oh God, there's been so many tours. I'm struggling to remember who was on which one, but it was an excellent team, and yeah, many guys. Jay Dernbach flew straight from there to the other side of the world to make his England debut during the middle of that trip. But yeah, to go there and to have that experience of bowling on those wickets week in, week out, and and to have the the lifestyle of hopping around islands and stuff like that, like you do in the West Indies. I took 5 t-shirts and 2 pairs of jeans for 6 weeks because we flew around everywhere on the tiny little planes between the islands, and once you fill up your cricket bag, you had no space for anything else weight wise. They just wouldn't take anything. So yeah, it was an interesting trip all around. Yeah,
I know, having myself with my wife been to Antigua, St. Lucia, Barbados. The Caribbean's a wonderful place to go, and I know it's the Coolidge Ground, as it's now called, ex-Allen Stanford Ground in Antigua. Where England are playing at the moment. I've been lucky enough to go there and to see the facilities. But what passion the West Indians have for their cricket. Had you played any other cricket overseas in club cricket before then, or was that your first venture overseas?
Well, no, I'd been on a few tours, but never sort of taken myself off. I hadn't had a chance at that point in my career, really, to take myself off to play any sort of club cricket. I only did that in the last sort of little period of time. I went across to Australia and spent the winter living with Mark Cosgrove and playing for his team in Adelaide. But before that, no, it was just tours on top of tours, to be honest. And I was always involved in the sort of junior England stuff and England under 19 tours and various things, and that was the kind of next step on that sort of ladder.
Yeah, but great to hone your skills in different environments. And 2012, you turned down a contract offer with Glamorgan, and you agreed terms with Middlesex.
I did. So the end of 2012. Was when that sort of happened, and look, that came about purely because I wanted to give myself the best chance of playing for England. I was involved, like as we've spoken about, through all the junior stuff. I was involved in the Lions and the England A, and felt like I was getting closer, and felt that to give myself the best chance and to make sure I left no stone unturned, I had to make a really tough choice. I spent the first 2 weeks of September in 2012, not playing, but getting on the train. I got in the car, and through the PCA, we went to all the clubs who were, going to be in Division 1 the year after, and said anybody who'd like to have a chat, James is prepared to come and have a chat. So I went to see Jason Gillespie up at Leeds. He was coach of Yorkshire at the time. I went to see Durham. Paul Collingwood put me up in Lumley Castle for the evening, and we went to have lunch the day after. I went to Warwickshire. I went to Sussex. I went to Surrey. I went to Middlesex, just to meet and chat and try and decide, where the best place was, for me to end up, really. And I sat in a cloudless sky at Lord's in a box with Angus Fraser and Richard Johnson at the end of back end of 2012, and decided that Middlesex was the place that I needed to go to.
And obviously someone like Gus Fraser, Richard Johnson, who I know is, I think it's the Surrey job he's landed, isn't it?
He's gone back, actually. He's gone back to Middlesex.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. He went to Surrey, now gone back to replace Stuart Law. 2 fine bowlers. And everyone admires high ambitions, James, and to play for England, obviously, is the pinnacle for a professional cricketer. And at the end of 2012 and 2013, you were actually chosen in England's T20 squad for a tour to New Zealand.
Yeah, I was. So I was in the end of 2012, in the December, I was in India with the Lions. Then the main England team were there playing some T20s, and I got asked to stay behind. Stuart Broad got injured just before Christmas, and they asked me to stay behind as cover for those T20 games, which was an incredible experience. To be in India with packed houses, with MS Dhoni walking out to bat, or even MS Dhoni walking out of the dressing room to hit some underarms, was probably the loudest thing I've ever heard at a sporting ground. We came home. I was preparing to go to Australia with the Lions after Christmas. I had a call saying that I was going on the main tour to New Zealand. So flew out for a couple of T20s, and then the ODI tour was the one that I was sort of mainly there for. It was a 3-match ODI trip. It was 1-1 going into the third game, and I didn't play. Had it been 2-0 probably either side, I probably would have made my debut. But that wasn't meant to be, and I came home from that trip having not played, but had a wonderful experience. It was my first trip to New Zealand, my only time I've ever been to New Zealand, and I lapped up and loved every second of it.
Who were the other bowlers in the party?
On that trip, Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad, Chris Wokes, myself, possibly Jay Dernbach. I think that might be missing someone, but it was largely the guys who have and are the stalwarts of the game through all of my career, really. So to spend a bit of time with Jimmy and Stuart and pick their brains and learn and all those sort of things you do when you're away, drink coffee and talk cricket and stuff was a great experience for a bloke at sort of 22, 23.
Now, I've not been lucky enough as yet to venture to New Zealand, but I know everyone who's been there has said what a lovely country, fantastic grounds, picturesque, and all the rest of it. Would that leads into a question that we've had sent in from David, who I think is actually on the call, who wants to know your favourite ground. I wonder whether it was one of the ones in New Zealand, or would it be, in fact, the next big group?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be high. It's going to be a hard place to beat. I've been incredibly fortunate to play there for the last 9 years. To call that place, home, to drive in through the Grace Gates every morning, to go and sit and have lunch, to be honest, in the players' dining room, to sit on the balcony and watch the guys bat, and then to play as many games as I have on that ground is something I hold very dear. Favorite ground is a great question. Probably Newlands is hard to beat, I'd imagine, in Cape Town. That's pretty special. With Table Mountain in the background, and that's I'd probably go Newlands, might be one of the favorite places. But yeah, look, you can't beat Lords. I've been fortunate enough to play there, like I said, a huge amount. So yeah, what an experience.
Well, we can see on the photo the other very idiosyncratic aspect of the Lord's ground, looking just from right to left. I've chosen this photo because it does actually show the slope at Lord's. So for you as a bowler, James, did you have to adapt to the slope?
Yeah, it takes some time. It really does, and people often find that they have sort of preferred ends to bowl at, and I always had, very subconsciously, I've always had a little sort of Glamorgan jump in right at the end of towards getting into my delivery stride. And I always found that bowling from this end, as you're looking at the photo now, from the nursery end, was sort of suited me better. I found that the little jump in was exacerbated by the slope a little bit, and it kind of threw me off. But I managed to take some wickets at both ends of that ground, but probably bowled most of my overs from the nursery end, I think.
And to walk through the pavilion there with all the MCC members, to be sat in I know you're going to be sat in the away changing room when Glamorgan go there in September, but to be sat in the home changing room at Lord's and those honours boards, to see all the great names who've played there, the great and the good of world cricket.
Yeah, and I still count myself really lucky. I'm a young lad from the Bond. To be sat here for one, to talk about these experiences, to talk about times through my life and my career is, I hold them very dear, and I consider myself incredibly lucky, really. To be at this stage and to have gone through and experienced what I have up until this point.
Yeah, well, we're talking about honours boards. 2015, a remarkable game. I'm sure you remember it very well, against Durham, where, and I can remember, and it expect nothing less for me as a stato. Getting really, really quite excited because you ended up taking 9 for 34 at Lords against Durham. And I know my mobile phone and my email inbox was buzzing that day with people asking about which Welshman had taken all 10 wickets in an innings. Well, it wasn't to be, but I was also asked who were the other Welshmen to take 9 wickets in an innings. Of course, I was able to come up with names like Malcolm Nash, Don Shepherd, Jim Presley, but not at Lords. So, James, what was it like for you that day?
Well, there's probably more context to this. This is the uniqueness of Lords, I suppose, in that this was the last innings of the game. I think Middlesex in the first innings got best part of 430. Sam Robson got a brilliant 150. We walked off, I think, towards the latter half of day 3, if I remember correctly, or slightly earlier on day 3, having bowled Durham out for about 280, thinking that we were in a really good position. I had to jump off the physio bed because I was having a bit of treatment. I went in and we were 30 for 7 or something. Found ourselves in a right pickle. The ground had gone from being bathed in sunlight for a couple of days to being overcast and quite murky, and the ball started darting around everywhere. We got bowled out for 80 odd, I think, because Tim Mercer whacked a few at the end at number 11. Obviously, then didn't have as many on the board as we would have liked. I got 2 wickets in the evening on day 3. Turned up on day 4, and there was a massive howling gale. Tim Mercer had injured himself earlier in the game. He had a bad hamstring, so he wasn't going to bowl. There was a massive, massive wind going from the pavilion straight to the nursery end down the ground. So there's myself and Stephen Finn, who were the main other seamers. So it was decided that Finney would start at the pavilion end. I'd bowl 2 or 3, 4 overs. Because of the wind was so strong, we'd get a spinner on at that end, and we'd just rotate me and Steve at the other end. I got a wicket early, got them to 3 down, and then just had an absolute day out, really. I bowled them in a brilliant spot. They just bowled on a perfect length for that wicket. Ball hit the edge. The boys caught everything. And we'll go down as one of the most special days, I think, running in towards the pavilion at Lords, taking 9 for to win a game, to win a first class game was, one of the experiences I'll treasure most, I think.
To see your name then on an honours board.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the test match thing, but I came back in and there was a bit of tape and there was a bit of, I was just surreal. And you have days like that, very few in your career, if at all, really. So you really do have to appreciate them. We had a pretty quick turnaround, if I remember, into the next game. And, I did a couple of interviews after the game that day. I was in the gym next morning at Lords, and you sort of roll into the next game again. And it takes, you need to look for a little break in the calendar to try and appreciate, what you've sort of achieved there. But Stephen Finn took the other one. I think I had 7 at the time, and Finney took the 8. And then I got the last 2. So there was murmurings when they were 7 down that I might get a chance to get all 10. But no, if I remember correctly, Usman Arshad inside edged one onto his thigh padding or caught in the gully or third slip off Finney, which was the 8th wicket. But look, at that point, I really didn't mind how we got him. It was let's win the game, and to do it in that sort of fashion, in a probably unfavourable bowling conditions. In terms of the wind, I mean, the pitch, it was certainly an overcast day, and we had plenty of assistance from the wicket. But yeah, what a special couple of days.
Would that, as a bowler, then be your proudest day in first class?
I probably suppose it has to go down as my proudest day. I mean, results wise, quite clearly. There's a few other days I think that I've also bowled pretty well. That you don't always get the rewards. Sometimes it's not an exact science, as and everyone on this call will know that you have days where you bowl brilliantly and don't get a huge amount of reward. But that was certainly a day where I bowled very, very well and really got the reward for it as well. And this is a huge. It's lovely to see. I got 9 for 34, but my memory and the photo that I hold dearest is all 11 blokes sat in the corner of the dressing room, sharing a drink after after that and sort of reminiscing, and we went up and had lunch together, and they're the real memories as well that that are part of this.
Yeah, I mean, they're the personal things that you cherish. And
look, 2015 was a big year for me. I mean, I left Glamorgan in 2012. I got injured all through 2013. We decided, rightly or wrongly, to tear apart my action in 2014, and I really struggled. And this was the last year of a 3-year contract. And, I needed to perform, and so to put that day in to come out at the end of that season with, I think I got 60 something wickets in that year, and that was a big year, and sort of put my career back on track a little bit from where it was. I was 25 at that point, and another bad year there would have seen some more questions asked, I suppose.
And a Middlesex cap, so you follow in the footsteps of the likes of Tony Cotty, another Westie, who of course won his cap with Glamorgan and also with Sussex, and you win a Middlesex cap. And of course, everyone knows that the winning of the county cap is a huge honour, and helps to secure a place in the lineup. Here you are bowling, I think this is Radlett, if I've got the grounds, a lovely ground. I was actually there for family reasons a couple of weeks ago. Sadly, an aunt of mine who lives in Hertfordshire passed away, and I spent a few days up there, and my relatives there gave me a little tour around, and Radlett and the other grounds in Hertfordshire that Middlesex play at, Old Merchant Taylors, and some other quite interesting grounds, James. So let's just talk about grounds, because obviously Glamorgan playing at, well, not this year at Swansea or Colwyn Bay, but we've got Neath in the calendar. What about Middlesex? Because of course, as you said earlier, Lord's being used for test matches, so Middlesex have to go on the road. And I can remember chatting with you at Richmond, the home of London Welsh Rugby Club, where Glamorgan meeting Middlesex on several occasions in T20 cricket. I can remember Adam Gilchrist was in the Middlesex lineup there. But what was it like then for you playing at the outgrounds with Middlesex?
Really good. It has its challenges. Middlesex not owning Lords, just being a tenant, has its issues. Your cricket bag is always in the boot of your car, and you never truly feel like it's your home, because I suppose it isn't in many ways. But we were really well looked after. Radlett, Merchant Taylors, as you mentioned, Richmond, occasionally in my time at Southgate. But I know they used to play there a lot more before I started playing for Middlesex, and I think they're trying to go back there more now. But yeah, look, I've got a lot of opinions on this. Middlesex need to find a true sort of second home, or a first home, really, so that their first and second teams have somewhere to practice, because we often had to search around for facilities when we couldn't get to Lords, and that was tricky. I come back now to Glamorgan, you see how lucky you are to have Sapphire Gardens and those facilities just on tap, largely whenever you want and whenever you need them. And, that wasn't the case for Lords. So yeah, we had to go searching around. We used to go to Uxbridge quite a bit. They had a really good wicket there. But yeah, it was difficult at times.
Yeah, I was speaking with a colleague yesterday up at Worcester, where of course they don't have an indoor school at New Road. And yes, there are some very good private schools and some very good club facilities, but sometimes in this day and age, we forget how fortunate, as you say, here we are at Sapphire Gardens with the indoor school and the top class facilities that we've got here for pre-season. Well, let's just talk about your other bowling colleagues. We talked earlier about your bowling colleagues with Glamorgan, Dave Harrison, Will Owen, Adam Shantry, Hugh Waters, Garnet Kruger. You've already mentioned Tim Murtagh, but who were your other, and you briefly mentioned Steve Finn, but who were your other bowling colleagues during your time at Middlesex?
Well, largely there was the two you mentioned. So there was myself, Timmy Murtagh, Stephen Finn, and Toby Rowland-Jones. Three of my best friends. We've played a huge amount of cricket together in the last 9 years. They're all incredible cricketers in their own right and incredible people. And, more towards a more recent time, you've had sort of Tom Helm and Ethan Bamber sort of come into the team and come through in the last few seasons. And we always had a really, really strong kind of core of seamers. Made it challenging at times because, you were missing out when you felt like you shouldn't be and when you felt like you were bowling really rather well because you were missing out for, 3 top-class seamers in Tim, Toby and Finney sometimes. But no, it was a wonderful quartet and we spent a huge amount of time together. We still speak together a huge amount and I'm really lucky that was kind of one of the reasons I went. I wanted to go and challenge myself and those guys were serious cricketers. I didn't know any of them apart from Stephen a little bit. We played a bit. We went to go on a tour and the under-19s World Cup tour together. But yeah, with sort of Angus Fraser at the helm and Richard Johnson as sort of bowling coach and with those guys to bowl with and learn from. That's really why Middlesex, if you throw Lords in the mix as well, that's why Middlesex became the option I chose.
Yeah, and just to pick up there, quite a lot of competition and no surprise then that you have some loan spells with Kent. We can see there you are in a Kent Spitfires top, and also a couple of loan spells with Glamorgan back here in Wales.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the great bits of the system now is that if you're not getting regular cricket, there is opportunity to go on loan at other teams, and this picture was at the start of sort of 2018. After we won the championship, we were on the flight home, coming back from a pre-season tour, and Angus said, "Look, I'm really sorry, but you're not going to start. I'm going to pick Stephen, Timmy Murtagh, and Toby in front of you." So he said, "Look, I understand you want to play, and I understand you want to get some cricket." And the guys from Kent have been on the phone, and would you like to go and play for a couple of games with them? And that was a really, really, easy conversation, I suppose, in that sense. I was disappointed not to be in the Middlesex team, but to have the opportunity to go down to Canterbury and play some cricket down there was great, and it's a wonderful part of the world, and there's some great people there.
Yeah, and of course at the same time you mentioned Tom Helm, who also had a brief loan spell here at Glamorgan, and Harry Podmore also brief loan spell with Glamorgan, and now he's also followed in your footsteps down to the St Lawrence ground in Canterbury and doing well with Kent. And I think I agree with you, James. I think the loan system is excellent, and it does help in many ways. Well, let's, in the final part of the formal talk, I've still got some more questions to ask you, but now here you are back in Wales, back with Glamorgan. What are your ambitions and what are your targets for the forthcoming season?
Well, the first thing I can say is I've got a little bit less hair now coming back than when I left. Looking at some of these photos, my kind of, I suppose, my role as I see it now is one, very clearly to perform and to be, I want to challenge myself to be the best seamer that Glamorgan have. I mean, that's I suppose every seamer's challenge who's on the staff of the club is to try and be the best. But I think the one thing I'd love to do is I'm incredibly grateful for the career I've had to date, the opportunities I've had. So alongside playing as well as I physically can for the foreseeable future, to try and leave cricket in Wales, Glamorgan, in the best shape possible whenever my time comes to finishing, is really important to me. I still have ambitions. I still would love to play for England. I would still love to wear an England badge at some point. I realise that's going to be tough, but you never know how these things sometimes work out. And I'll be striving to be fit and bowling as well as possible. And you never know where things might be in 2 or 3 or 4 years' time, depending who's in the England team and who's fit and who's injured, and whatever opportunities may present themselves. But no, look, I want to be, to perform to my peak. I feel as fit now as I probably ever have been. I'm starting to see some of the benefits of taking care of myself through all these years. Whereas, some people, when they get into their 30s, you think it might catch up with them a little bit. I feel like I've still got a huge amount left to go. I'm excited. I think the team is in a really good place. Obviously, to build on the success of winning the Royal London Cup last year, to make sure that we push everyone on the staff to give their best, and to make sure that I can sort of bring as much ambition as possible to the group, and we can, really make a challenge and really make, a huge amount of success here. Try and build, like I said, sort of try and build on last year, but to look forward and to see, what we can achieve.
Yeah, well, just to pick up on a couple of things there, James, that as always, you're talking great sense, but just to pick up on a couple of things there. In the recent Ashes series, Scott Boland, who had been a stalwart of Shield cricket, man in his early 30s as well, coming into the Australian Test team and doing really well. And you only have to look at someone in the England lineup like Ollie Robinson. I think his early years, Yorkshire, Kent, it's well chronicled, and then having a couple of good years with Sussex, and certainly here last summer, outstanding performance for Sussex against Glamorgan. So I agree with you. You can never say never. I guess as well, it must be a great opportunity for you to come here this year in 2022 to also carry on honing your skills. You briefly on your loan spells have done that, but to hone your skills and to learn off another great stalwart, another great Australian cricketer in his final year of county cricket, Michael Hogan.
Yeah, what a brilliant signing, Michael's been, and what a stalwart he's been of the club. He joined just as I was leaving. And he's put in, the sort of day-to-day consistency, over 9 or 10 years that make him, the bowler he is and the man he is. So yeah, look, I've got nothing but admiration for him, and I know everyone's going to be chomping at the bit to spend as much time as they can with him and take everything they can while he's in his last year. But I think that goes, for all the bowlers. I can probably speak for everyone in that sense. But what Michael's done for Glamorgan and how he's performed on the field and been around the team and off it is a true testament to himself.
Yeah, and as you said about building on the success in the Royal London Cup, how fitting it was last August that in that never to be forgotten final against Durham at Trent Bridge, it was Hogs who claimed the final wicket and getting another stalwart of the county game out in Chris Rushworth. Now, a question that has come in again from Howell, who I think is on the call, is talking about bowlers yet. And I'm not going to use the phrase never. I think Howell in his question said never to play for England, but I'm going to say yet to play for England. And we said Chris Rushworth, possibly his days are or his best days behind him. But James, the question is, with England doing a red ball reset, who are the bowlers who you think the England selectors, obviously I've got your name down on the list already, but what Howell has asked is, who are the bowlers, also who are the batters who could be in the mix? Who are the ones you think who could be being looked at by the England selectors as this red ball reset takes place?
So it's really interesting, and I'm quite fortunate with my sort of role at the PCA now. I'm quite involved, shall we say, in a lot of these conversations. And the Red Bull reset isn't necessarily quite a Red Bull reset. I think they're trying to steer away from that terminology. This being discussed, I think, more as a sort of high performance review is kind of what they're trying to term it as at the moment. They don't want to be seen from, swinging towards white ball cricket, which we clearly have done in the last, 4 or 5 years, back to a kind of, right, we're going to swing back towards red ball. And I think there's certainly a thought of how can we just make sure that England have the best chance to be number one in the world at all formats, and what does that, from a top down, what does that look like, and what does that filter down through, the game to look like? Look, there's some fabulous bowlers around the country. Chris Rushworth over such a long period of time has clearly been one of those. I'm trying to think, to be honest, of bowlers who haven't yet had a chance, who will do.
Yeah, what Howell has put in his question, he's just thrown out a name, Matthew Fisher, who's on the England tour to the West Indies at the moment.
No, I mean, he came on the scene with quite a big bang, didn't he, quite a few years back. Struggled a bit with some injuries, I know, over that sort of time, and came back and bowled brilliantly last year. I was brushing past, I can't remember where we were, I was probably on the motorway somewhere, and brushed past Steve Kirby, who would be a name I know many people will know, and he said they were up, he was coaching Derby at the time, and they were up playing Yorkshire at Scarborough, and he said Matthew Fisher bowled unbelievably well. And that, I think, largely is what has got him onto this trip now in the West Indies. So look, he's got a lot of raw ability. There's what you want. He bowls a decent pace. He's tall. Mcgrath could bounce and get some movement and stuff like that. So look out for him. He could, if he's in a good place and gets an opportunity, he could be a guy who could stick his hand up for playing for England for the foreseeable future.
And on the batting front, Alex Lees, great to see him getting a few runs in the warm-up game in Antigua. And someone who, like yourself, changed counties from Yorkshire to Durham, getting some runs, and now an opportunity to play at the highest level. Would you view Alex Lees as a difficult opponent to get out?
Well, I know Alex Lees very well. We shared a room together on tour, on a Lions tour, when he first kind of came on the scene. He came on as a young man playing for Yorkshire, got a big double 100 at Scarborough. I'm going to say as a teenager, if I had to guess correctly. And we went on a Lions trip together and spent a lot of time together. And he is, he went through a tough spell at Yorkshire, decided to move, and he's sort of reinvigorated himself at Durham and is back in some really good form and looks a really good player again. Look, Alex can play, absolutely. There's a lot of guys around the country who can play, but he's certainly one of them, and I hope he has a really good trip in the West Indies. And hey, look, there's so many spots open in that England batting lineup that if anyone puts their hand up and scores some runs and scores them consistently, there's a spot there for them for a long, long time to come.
Yeah, I know that in the newspapers, a lot of people pushing the name of Rob Yates of Warwickshire. I know he impressed in some games against Glamorgan, but let's be just a little bit parochial. Let's look at our own talent. And a young man, a 23-year-old Cardiff-born cricketer, who's going to be now the club vice-captain for the coming year, in Kieran Carlson. Have you bowled against Kieran?
Absolutely, yeah. Spent quite a bit more time, but bowled and played against Kieran a little bit, and then obviously spent a huge amount of time with him this winter since I've sort of come back, and been very impressed. Him as a man, him as a player, if he can build on the successes he achieved last year, to captain a team at that age, to captain the club to a trophy at that age is quite an exceptional thing. And to score a lot of runs and in the manner he did alongside that makes it even more so. So, I think the club have really got a good one in Kieran, and we need to do everything we can to support him to make sure he's the best player he possibly can be.
Absolutely. Well, you just mentioned a few minutes ago, James, your role with the PCA. So just talk us through. You're the current chair, but how did you get involved with the PCA? I know quite a few people on the call may not necessarily know. yes, they know about the PCA, but they don't know how it works and how you move on to be chair. So just talk us through it.
So for those who do and don't, the PCA is the Professional Cricketers Association. I was getting more and more involved with the PCA, largely because I don't know what it is I really want to do with the rest of my life once I finish being a cricketer. They're very proactive in pushing players into further education, into business, into work experience, into whatever guys feel like their calling is. And they do a fabulous job. And I was getting more involved in the PCA. There was the opportunity came up. Mark Wallace recommended. Mark Wallace is obviously a former PCA chair. He recommended that if I ever had the chance, I should throw my hat in the ring. Daryl Mitchell, who was my predecessor's term, was coming to an end.
The Worcestershire batter, yeah.
Yes. And then basically I had to apply. I had to write a manifesto for what I wanted to, how I saw the role and how I saw cricket in the next few years and how I wanted to move it forward. And it then goes to a vote. So every county then had a vote. Now there are obviously, now that we've taken on the female professional members, there are votes from their teams as well. And I was the winner, really. I think there was 3 or maybe 4 candidates at the time who decided they would like to go for the role. And I came out the winner, and I'm just about a year into my sort of 2-year term at the moment. So yeah, it's exciting, it's interesting. There are a huge number of conversations that have to happen before any of us step on the field. That's been a really interesting eye opener to see just how much has to go and how the cogs of the game actually work behind the scenes. It's been challenging at times with everything the cricket landscape has faced, particularly in the last sort of six or 8 months. But one that I really enjoyed so far, and one I want to take forward into the next year.
Yeah, as you say, there have been difficult times. Cricket in the news for the wrong reasons, but now, of course, with the new season starting, an opportunity to get cricket on the back pages and the front pages for all the right reasons. And just talk us through that, James.
Well, absolutely. I think that, cricket has been highlighted, to have some deep-rooted issues within the game, and whatever people's opinions are, there are clearly some issues that, that are there and have been there for quite a while now. It's up to everybody who is involved with the game to make sure that that's not the case and stamp it out and do everything we can. And I had an incredible experience speaking in front of the select committee at Parliament just a few weeks ago, and that was probably the most intimidating experience I've ever come across, to be honest, certainly in my lifetime so far. But what I think it did show is to the wider community how much people care about cricket. How hurt they've been by what's been discussed and what's been brought to light that's been happening in cricket for some time, and how much there is a real will for people to make sure this doesn't continue, and to make sure that the cricket is a game for everybody. And that's certainly from the people who are involved. That's certainly their kind of mantra and what they're trying to put in place to move things forward.
Absolutely, and we wish, I'm sure everyone on the call this evening and the wider cricket community wish you all the very best in your PCA role in making these important changes. Well, I've got this photo as well, James. I did actually look at it twice, and I was wondering whether you were actually a jockey, but I know that you've done a lot of fundraising for the PCA. So just talk us through this.
Well, this is me outside my former place, sort of in London, going out on the bike. Cycling, road cycling is sort of my passion outside of playing cricket. I love it. It's my escape. It's my way of keeping fit. It's my way of making sure that I can get a huge amount of cardio work done and not running and being on my feet and taking care of my body and my joints and various things. So yeah, look, I've done a huge amount of cycling. I've done all the PCA kind of charity rides that we've done, and I'd expanded a few of them slightly. So the one we did last winter, or last October, I should say, was initially designed to be Paris to London. for obvious reasons and COVID, that we didn't think we could get the best part of 50 people into Paris and back out on bikes and back into the country the next day with everything that's been going on in the world. So we went for a slightly modified version. We went from Headingley down to Lords over 3 days. Being a bit mad and someone who likes cycling, I decided to start in Cardiff. I started from here. I cycled to Headingley in 2 days. I did the 3 days with everybody back to North London. Had some food in the tavern at Lords and cycled back to where this photo was taken in Finchley, to where my former place was, and then woke up early the next morning and cycled from Finchley in North London back to Pontcanna in the day. So yeah, look, it's something I love. It was a great cause, and raising money for the Cricketers Trust. They do a huge amount for players, past and present. And it was an important one for me to do alongside the thing that I love doing, which is cycling. So that made it much easier.
Yeah, I know another former Glamorgan, this time opening batter, Steve James as well. Lots and lots of cycling activity then. Obviously, Matt Maynard recently, some wonderful fundraising activities. And it's great to see you, James, there at the forefront of these. Perhaps I could just move on to a couple of questions. Leslie, who's on the call this evening, I know, intrigued to know whether you see, when the time comes to hang up, as you said, your bowling boots, you moving into cricket administration. Do you see that as a potential future career?
Very possibly, yes. I think there is a space in the game for more and better administrators, definitely. Do I see that matching up with my skill set? Yeah, I suppose it could do, especially with the experience I'm sort of having ongoing now with the PCA. That's an avenue I may well go down. I really don't know, is the honest answer. I've probably, it's hard when I've probably got too many, because I've got such a blank slate. There's probably too many things I could kind of go into, and with my sort of personality, if I was to jump at one, I'm pretty sure I'd find a way to sort of succeed at it. But yeah, I think pinning it down to what at the moment is the challenging part, and what I need to work on more, I suppose, in the next couple of years.
Yeah, well, certainly I think everyone on the call will agree that for the last 90 minutes, your articulate and well thought out and very reasoned and very cogent answers show that in your armory, it's not just brawn, but there's brain as well, and a very clear thought process, which I'm sure is going to stand Glamorgan in good stead when the season starts in 3 weeks' time. Another question, James, that's come in from David. It's not this time your most favourite, but your least favourite. And David has asked, what's your least favourite ground? And also, which batter have you least enjoyed bowling against? So let's do the ground first of all.
Least favourite ground. I'm trying to think of places where I've done really badly. I'm actually lucky that I've probably played at those places enough where I've had some good days and some terrible days. I think my least favourite to play, just purely from a ground sort of perspective, probably be, I'm going to say Leicester or Derby, probably just from not because of the places particularly, just the ground. The changing rooms aren't the nicest, the facilities aren't the greatest, and for whatever reason, you play at Derby, sometimes you feel like the weather isn't always that good as well, and it's just little things that kind of compound themselves. To be honest, there's no real backgrounds around the place. There's some that are better than others, absolutely playing at Lords and the Oval and Trent Bridge and Savile Gardens, and there's plenty, and even more. I could go even more around the world and name quite a few more, but I think there's some better than others rather than worst grounds.
And the batter who you least like bowling against?
I realise this is a fairly close call, but who I least like bowling against? To be honest, the person I find hardest to bowl against through chunks of my career was Ravi Vipara. Playing 4-day cricket against Ravi when Ravi was in really good form, you feel like, he could get on top of your best ball, which made life really, really hard. You feel like he'd hit you through the leg side really well if you've aired a fraction straight, and he hit you through the covers if you aired a fraction full. And I think they're the players, you feel like if you air in any place, you're going to get hurt. And I think they're the hardest people to bowl at. And through some of the years, and I can remember particularly some of the knocks that Ravi played against us. A couple of big championship knocks. I'm sure he got some big runs at Chelmsford. I remember getting some big runs at Swansea in a couple of games. Certainly one. And I think, when players like Ravi, who are kind of free-flowing, natural players, are in good form and feeling confident on a decent wicket, they can be hard opponents to come up against.
Okay. Well, there's two more. One from Peter, who's on the call, and this is now about fielders. Now, you mentioned earlier on some great catches off your bowling, but if you had to choose a fielder, I suppose we could broaden it out to say wicket-keeper and also an outfielder. If you wanted in your dream team, the James Harris 11, who would be the wicket-keeper? And also what Peter has asked is who would be the outfielder as well? I know there have been some great, there have been a lot of people, and I know I speak for a lot of people to say how great it is, how nice it is to see Ben Folkes, hopefully behind the stumps in the England team in the coming days. He's obviously struggled with injury and other things in the last 12 months. But what Peter's asking, James, is the wicketkeeper you would like most of all, and then the outfielder you would like most of all in your dream team. Okay,
so I'll base this on the only thing you want as a bowler, that if you catch the edge, that you feel like you haven't got to worry and it's going to be taken, because having that as almost like an automatic is a really, really kind of big thing, and having catches dropped is the most frustrating thing in the world as a bowler. So I've got to be honest, I know he's probably going to watch this at some point, or he's going to catch this, I'm sure, and he's my boss now these days, but I can't remember Mark Wallace making too many errors behind the stumps. I feel like anytime anything got nicked anywhere near Wally, the catch was taken, and we were celebrating really soon after. So likewise, look, John Simpson at Middlesex, who's been for a long time, has gone under the radar and been underrated. I know he played for England last year and it was very well deserved, but he's got a fabulous pair of hands as well, and he's taken some excellent catches off me down the years. Now, this might surprise a few. The best slip fielder I've played with, I think, is a gentleman by the name of Ollie Rayner.
Okay, yeah.
Off-spin bowler, number 8, number 9 batsman. Humongous, like a big human being. Ollie was 6'5", incredibly big hands. Stood at second slip at what felt like a very strange angle, and used to make these big foot marks at second slip, which used to look ridiculous at the end of the game. And he caught everything, absolutely everything. And some of the one-handed blinding catches and various things. When you start, the game expands a bit and you start losing a few more slips, and you might have, just 2 slips left, or maybe even just Ollie left at a sort of wide first into a sort of second slip. Some of the catches he took were unbelievable. And certainly from the seamers always used to love when Ollie was picked. There were times when it would be very easy to not play Ollie, I think, in some of the teams we were playing, but Ollie was so valuable and caught so much at second slip that he almost, could have almost at times got picked as a second slip fielder all on his own. So probably not the most obvious answer. I mean, I played with Herschel Gibbs as well when he was over for Glammy, so I probably could have easily said Herschel, but yeah, purely from a catching perspective, Ollie was excellent.
Okay, well, Paul is also on the call, and he's come up with the final 2 questions for this evening. And it's interesting you said there about Herschel Gibbs. We mentioned Jason Gillespie earlier on, and of course earlier you mentioned Chris Rogers and a load of other people at Middlesex. But given your lengthy career in county cricket, James, if you had to just mention one overseas player, again, in your James Harris Dream 11, we've got Mark Wallace behind the stumps. We've got Ollie Rayner there in the slips. But if you in your Dream 11 had to choose one overseas player, Paul is wondering who that would be.
So the man I would like to pick, I didn't play anywhere near enough with. I think he was coming towards the back end of his career as I was starting, and he played the first few games I played for Glamorgan. That was Matthew Elliott.
Right.
Matty Elliott caught Bilal Shafai out for my first wicket, and we had some fabulous conversations in the first couple of games. I think we played 4 games together the start of that year, and that was his time. And there's one thing I wish I could have had more time with him. And he always told a brilliant story. Whether this was a bit of bravado or whether this was just him telling me as a 16, 17-year-old. But he said, James, he said, when I'm batting, if you look out at me in the middle, he said, I'll let you know how I feel about a certain bowler and how good they are, but how high up my arm I wear my sort of sweatband on my batting arm. So he'd often start his innings and his sweatband would be really low down by the bottom of his glove. And you'd see sort of as he'd expand or someone else would come on who he really fancied and he didn't think was any good, he'd start pulling his sweatband up towards his elbow and he'd start crashing it to all parts. And if I could change one thing about the career today, to play a bit more with Matty Elliott, and it would have been a great experience, I think, to spend more time with him. Yeah,
you're quite right there, because I know in the wonderful summer of 2004, when Glamorgan, of course, won the one-day league, reached T20 finals day, there was a series of match-winning innings in championship cricket. And I can remember a game at Canterbury where Matt Maynard in his pomp, Matthew Elliott as well in his pomp, and 2 of the finest batsmen on a run chase you could possibly want. And I would agree wholeheartedly, James. Herb, top man. Now, Paul has sent in the final question for this evening as well. And for this, I'm more than happy for you to wear your PCA hat as well as your Glammy hat. But it's about the 100. And your thoughts on the game moving forward. As it moves forward, we had a wonderful time last summer with the Welsh Fire here at Sapphire Gardens. And I know everyone here really looking forward to another great summer, to see some of the finest men, but also mustn't be forgotten, some of the finest women playing here at Sapphire Gardens. So just to close on, James, from Paul, he just wanted your thoughts on the impact of the 100 on the wider game and moving forward.
Well, I think the impact has almost been felt before it started. For the ECB to be able to put this down on a piece of paper and sell it to the TV companies and to largely bring in the sum of money that they did before the tournament even got off the ground was quite extraordinary in itself. And that might not be the most obvious thing in the world to say, but that money really does filter down through the game and get towards the grassroots at the bottom. It improves facilities, it provides more coaching. It's the sort of lifeblood of the game that keeps it moving forward. Now, the competition itself, I think, was a brilliant success last year and will be a brilliant success moving forward. It took the IPL a long time to secure its place and to kind of capture the audience that it was after. And we see what it is, today and how big it is. Now, the 100 is hopefully going to have the same impact with us. We saw last summer, how many more youngsters it brought into cricket grounds, male and female. It really, for the women's game, it's taken that to a completely different level and will be, where we'll see the biggest growth in cricket moving forward. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea. I can totally understand why. But the game has to find ways to keep evolving because, that doesn't mean we ignore the traditions and everything that we love so much, but we need to keep bringing in, the youngsters. And there are so many things they could be doing right now. The way the world currently is in 2022, that we need to drag them into cricket grounds, however that is possible. And this is the best way I think we have to do that. And once we can bring them in to watch some 100 games, we can teach them about the wider cricket world, and we can teach them about, you know, the bits that, you know, a lot of us on this call hold so dearly, and the intricacies of 4-day crickets and, you know, longer form crickets. And that's, you know, it's such a positive in this first year that I can only see it growing, especially when we can put the big overseas names on the ticket like we promised, and we can get through COVID, and, you know, we can really get the show on the road, hopefully this summer, and if not this one, you know, the next one as well. So yeah, look, I've got a lot of positive things to say about it, about the opportunities it's going to give to the game, you know, moving forward from this point.
Yeah, and I completely reiterate that. And with my my work here in the museum, here at Sapphire Gardens, part of the community team as well, I've spent the last, well, certainly every day this week out on the road in primary schools in the Cardiff area, and today out at a school in the Ely area of Cardiff, chatting to year 4, year 5, year 6. So talking to 9, 10 and 11-year-olds, showing them pictures of cricket, telling them about all the wonderful opportunities. And it was really heartening, James, to hear them getting so excited, because several of them were lucky enough last summer to come to watch Glamorgan here in the T20, but also some of them were fortunate enough to come to watch the Welsh Fire. So it's a great time to be involved, and it's a wonderful opportunity for, as you quite rightly say, a new audience to come in. I'm of a generation, I picked up the cricket bug in the late 1960s, the early 1970s, when the Sunday League, John Player Sunday League on BBC Two, every Sunday you could sit at home and you could watch a one-day game, and you could come down here, as I did as a young boy, to watch Glamorgan play in the Sunday League. And that's what got me in, the TV coverage in particular. And I'm sure, as you quite rightly say, the exposure for the next generation has to be a wonderful thing. Well, James, the 2 hours nearly that we've been talking have flown by. I know a lot of people in the chat function here tonight just saying how refreshing it's been to hear you, your honesty, your lucidity, and also your opinions. Not that you're an opinionated person, but just your views on the game. And certainly as far as the PCA is concerned, and I think we all agree, it's been difficult times, but there's a very good leader of the PCA in your good self, steering the ship and hopefully moving into calmer and quieter waters. And here at Glamorgan, obviously everyone on the call this evening, James, wishes you all the very best in your return back on a permanent basis to Welsh soil. And we're looking forward, as you said earlier, to a lovely summer with Glamorgan. So on behalf of everyone on the call, James, many, many thanks this evening. I've just got a couple of little bits of housekeeping to do. First of all, just to say to everyone that you may or may not be aware that the museum now has a brand new website. I'm glad to say that we have been fortunate enough to have a grant from the Museums Federation, Museums and Art Galleries Federation. We received the grant at the back end of June and July last year. And I'm glad to say, delighted to say, that on Tuesday, the 1st of March, St. David's Day, the museum website, the revamped, enhanced museum website went live, and the URL www.cricketmuseum.wales. And a copy of this talk, together with all the other museum talks that we've done, and also all the anniversary talks which have taken place, they're all on the website. So if any of you on the call this evening want to listen again to James's very wise and sage words, well, as I say, head to www.cricketmuseum.wales and you'll be able to hear it all over again. And lots of other nice features on the museum website. It'd be great as well to hear people's feedback in terms of what's there. It's also the time of year, of course, we look forward to the new year. We also have a little look back, and a reminder, I'm sure everyone on the call, all the Glamorgan members and season ticket holders will have, if they haven't done so already, you'll be receiving in the next day or so the paperwork for the Glamorgan AGM, which is taking place here at Sophia Gardens on the 24th, I think it is, of March, and how great it is that we're now hopefully through the COVID restrictions, and how great it is for the first time in 3 years that we'll be able to meet face to face here at the ground for the AGM. Also, of course, it's the time of year where the Glamorgan Yearbook will shortly be making its appearance. I know quite a few people on the call have been sending in emails, placing an order. Well, the good news is that on Saturday, I'll be just going through the final set of proofs, and the yearbook will be available, as always, from the 24th of March onwards. An absolute bargain, a snip at £18 plus £3 postage, and a chance to read through the yearbook, to look back at that wonderful summer last year with Glamorgan in 2021, winning the Royal London Cup. And hopefully, as I say, people on the call will enjoy reading, as always, the Glamorgan Yearbook. Further information about that will be appearing on the Glamorgan website around the time of the AGM. Well, James, this is the final museum talk of the winter series, and I must say, in terms of your honesty, how refreshing, and it's great to hear your thoughts. And we started the winter with the talks, Kieran Carlson and others reflecting on 2021, and how great to hear you reflecting on your own career and looking ahead to 2022. It's been a great way to finish the series. I'm glad to say that there will be further museum talks in October, November, December, various names such as Colin Ingram. I'm hoping we'll be able to spend an evening with us. But James, on behalf of everyone on the call, just once again to thank you very much for your time this evening. I know with, as you said, you and your partner shortly to be moving into a new house. I know it's a busy time, but thank you so much for taking the time out, and we wish you all the very best in the coming weeks. And thank you once again. Diolch yn fawr iawn. And to everyone on the call, thank you for your support over the winter months. It's great to say that only 3 weeks away to when the cricket will be resuming for the coming season. So that's all for this evening from Sophia Gardens in my usual way. Good night. Noswaith dda.